Hello my friends, welcome to another tutorial. I hope you're all keeping very well out there and painting some wonderful artwork as well and learning a lot in the process, and I hope my videos are helping you out just a little bit anyway. This week on the channel I'm going to paint something quite nice. Well, everything is nice really in life, isn't it? But this one, I took this photograph myself when I was up and about. I was driving along a country road here in Cork and I spotted this beautiful run-down cottage, an old derelict cottage in a field, and it was just left there completely empty. It was falling down and just overgrown with trees and all that kind of stuff, and it just looked so captivating. I said I have to take a photograph of this and make a lovely tutorial. I think this will make a lovely tutorial, possibly 2 parts. I have a big canvas here now for a change, 20 by 16, and I'll do it in 2 parts perhaps. So we're going to be taking our time, lots of nice little details, just a change from the usual kind of quick landscapes. So I thought you might like to see something a little bit more in-depth. I'll show you on my phone here. I have a photograph of the house. I took this photograph myself. Now let me just see if I can get that in there so you can see. Can you see that? I think that's absolutely wonderful, and it just gives you a true sense of old Ireland and, you know, the types of houses people lived in back then. This must be well over 100 years old, I would say, and it's just falling down and it's overgrown with twigs and branches and all that kind of thing. I thought you might learn a little bit from this, and I might learn something myself, because it can be difficult painting an old house covered in branches and trees and foliage and all that kind of thing. It can be a little tricky, but I'm going to try it and see how it works out. I hope you learn a little bit from it. I have it sketched on my canvas here next to me. I'll show you in just a moment. When I set the camera up, you'll see the sketch, and I'll just run through a couple of little things with you with regards to perspective and getting perspective in a drawing and a painting. So join me for the next 60 minutes or so, and I hope you enjoy the tutorial. Lovely colours in this, nice natural landscape colours. And I have a limited palette, just a handful of colours, that should do. So what do you think? Let's have a go off of this and see how it turns out. I hope you enjoy the video, my friends. Thank you so much for subscribing and for supporting me as well. And I will keep it going. We'll keep up these lovely little landscapes. I love these little Irish ones. They're really captivating, I think. There's a lovely story behind these types of buildings. You can only imagine, you know, the way people lived back then. So I think it's very, very captivating. Let's try it and have a bit of fun along the way. Join me. Grab your stuff if you want to join me and follow me along. Okay, so here is the canvas and palette. First I'll tell you what colours I'm using today. I have titanium white, Naples yellow, which has slipped down my palette. And they can do that, especially when it's upright like this, and if the room is very warm, the paints get very soft. So I have Naples yellow, Cadmium yellow pale, burnt sienna, lamp black, burnt umber, magenta, phthalo blue and cadmium red. And here is my canvas, and there's the reference photograph, so you can see that now. I just kind of did a rough sketch, as you can see. I want to explain to you about the perspective, so let me get a pencil and show you. So what happens is I start with this line here, okay? And then to create the perspective, if you look at the photograph, you can see the bottom line goes up like this. So it goes up at an angle like this, and the top line comes down at an angle. So those 2 points get smaller and smaller and smaller until they meet. And that gives you perspective. And then I'm turning the side of the house upwards like this, and the top of the chimney then falls down like this. So all these angles give you that perspective of the house going away from you. So it's going away from you. Now, if I was looking dead on straight with this house, it would just be straight, but you would see no side. And if you're painting something like this, a building, always try and get something with the side of the building. That gives you that 3D effect, all right? So that's what I would say to you. The bottom line normally will go up slightly and the top line will go down slightly. and that gives you that perspective then, all right? So I did a quick sketch. There's lots of little bits of foliage and all that kind of thing. It's a very rundown cottage. Let's just start. Come on, let's start painting. I'm going to do a nice sky for this one. I'm getting my large, kind of soft brush, cheap soft brushes. Okay, that's what I use. I find they're the easiest. And what I'm going to do first is just coat the sky with some linseed oil on its own. Nothing else, just linseed oil. And give that a thin coat. That will help the paint move around very nicely on the canvas, all right? It just gives you a nice little base to work on, I think. It really helps. A little bit of black paint there from earlier on when I was sketching. So just very, very loosely over the sky, a very thin coat of linseed oil. And you should try this. You can use liquid clear as well. It's a very similar effect. But I find the linseed oil, it has a little bit more of a drag on it. Okay? It drags the paint. It's not as slippery as liquid clear or one of those types of mediums. So let's just dampen the brush very slightly, very, very lightly moist brush. I'm going to mix a nice blue for the sky first. Let's go. Phaylo blue, little white. And I'll always add a touch of white into my sky colour, because otherwise, if you use Phaylo blue or French ultramarine blue or cobalt blue on their own, they can be very translucent. So the colours won't kind of stay on the canvas properly. Now let me just take a look at this. I'm just going to paint this more. I always paint just a little bit, just to take a look, to see, am I happy with this? And that's not bad. Let's mix up a little bit more of that now. So a bit of Phaylo, some white. The white thickens the paint up just nicely. And I might take a hint of magenta. The tiniest hint just warms the blue ever so slightly. So let's just go across our sky with that colour. And you can see I'm using a very thin coat. It's really, really very thin. So I tend to kind of build up my layers as I'm going. A little bit more thinners now, just to mix it up. Because what happens is, I take the thinners, then I take the blue, and then I take the white, which thickens it up, you see. Now, touch of magenta again. Tiniest little touch is all you need. It's a very strong colour, the magenta. Tiniest little touch. I'm just going to paint a nice simple blue sky first. So don't even think about clouds for now. Let's just get a nice blue sky up here. And just soften as you go. Soften your brush strokes out. And I just keep adding touches of thinners when I'm mixing extra colour, okay? The thinners just to thin the white, because the white is very thick and very, very creamy. So you need to just kind of thin that white ever so slightly. Now as it comes down towards the horizon, it does get lighter. On the photograph, maybe not, but in general, a blue sky does get lighter as it comes down towards the horizon line. So I am going to start putting in a lot more white into the mix. Okay? Plenty more white. I'm just going around the building. Whatever you're painting, whatever kind of building you're painting, I tend to just leave the buildings white and just paint around them. It just makes life easier later on, doesn't it, really? So let's just keep going, adding plenty of white into this. Just covering that sky. And we keep going. And we just keep going until we're happy. Just keep going and adding colour and making it lighter or darker, whatever you feel, until you're happy with your painting, okay? Let's get a bit more of that now, and touch more blue. And the Phaylo blue, as you'll notice, it's a very kind of an earthy blue, isn't it? There's almost a hint of a turquoisey blue about that colour. So maybe if I add a touch of cadmium red into that. I did use cobalt blue and French ultramarine at the very beginning of my learning kind of career, we'll say, I just found French ultramarine and cobalt blues, I just found they didn't kind of look natural for me. So then I started using Phaylo blue, and then I found Phaylo blue is actually a very natural kind of a blue to use for a landscape, and I've just sort of stuck with it ever since, really. It's probably not great to be using just one blue, but I find if you have too many different types of blues and reds and greens on your palette, you just get confused, I think. So I kind of put into practice just using one blue. For me, it just helps you mix and learn. It teaches you how to mix the colour properly. Now, if I'm painting a seascape, I will use maybe cerulean blue as well. But other than that, it's just phthalo blue most of the time. We have a nice blue sky now, don't we? Nice rich blue sky. I might darken it slightly just on the very top. So I'll get some phthalo blue, a touch of magenta, and maybe a tiny touch of black, just to give that a nice deep colour. Look, let's just soften this across. So from the top corner, I'm going to just soften it down. Just to give that a kind of a gradient from left to right, if that makes sense. Just to add a bit of tone into the painting. And then we're on to our clouds. So that's the blue sky done. Let's move on and start our clouds. I'm just going to quickly clean my brush to get most of that blue off. I'm just rubbing it on some tissue vigorously, just to get as much blue as I can off the brush. And the white clouds, you can see the clouds are not really white, are they? They're kind of a light grey with a dark grey. But I'm going to just go into some white for now, because what will happen is when you put this white on the blue, it's going to start mixing immediately, isn't it? So let's just go, okay, let's just pick a point. We don't have to copy this now exactly. We can do this our own way. I'm just going to pick a point and just start dabbing and, you know, swiping and all that kind of thing, just moving the cloud around on the canvas, allowing it to take a natural form. That's all I'm doing, look. Allowing the cloud to do what it wants to do. I'll come over here then and just fill a little bit on that side. I'm just being very loose with the brush. This is how I paint my skies. I just put the paint on and allow the paint to do what it wants to do. That's generally how I kind of do my clouds. If you have your own way of doing clouds, by all means, do it your way. But this is how I kind of get my clouds ready. Now, I'm going to start putting on a deep grey into this. I'm going to take some black with a hint of phthalo blue and a hint of magenta. So we're going for like a bluey grey, but it's a warm. The magenta is just warming the bluey grey. And let's just pick a point and start putting in these shadows on the clouds. You can see what I'm doing? I'm just very randomly kind of dabbing and swishing my brush around. You see, I'm just kind of going in between these here and there, just hitting them here and there. That's all I'm doing. And you can bring it out as well, allow it to dance around on your canvas. It's very, very loose, isn't it? It's a very loose type of cloud painting. And this is just how I paint my clouds. I just look at the photograph very loosely, copy these shapes or whatever, but, you know, I don't try and make a photographic representation of what I'm painting. I'm just swishing it around, look, just swishing it around here and there. Let's just stop and take a quick look. All right, I'm going to go a little bit deeper and richer. So more black, a bit more blue. And I'm not using thinners in this at all, okay? There's no thinners in this. And let's just kind of add a little bit of strength into the clouds, just here and there. Just a touch. And just soften them. Just soften them around here and there. Little dab over here and there, Just, again, allowing the brush to kind of form its own shapes. And I'll put one small one over in the distance here, coming off the horizon. That's more kind of a flat type of cloud. Maybe one or two coming off of this up here. And I'm just going to go down to the bottom of the sky after I clean my brush, pick up some white, and just dab a little white across up there, look. Now, I'm going to go to my soft blender brush. Now, I have two blender brushes. I have a new one, which is just simply a makeup brush, a soft makeup brush. I have another one here which is quite old. I think I'll try the soft one, okay? And let's just kind of soften these together ever so gently. I'm just kind of tipping the canvas with my brush and swishing it around just to soften them in together, just to get rid of the kind of harsh lines and the harsh brush strokes. Soften them back into the sky ever so slightly, look. And I'm just very random, go around this very randomly. So you can see what I mean. I'm just softening them away. Now, how is that for a basic kind of a sky? That's not bad for a basic sky, is it? And you could just add, if you want, just a touch of highlight here and there, the corner of your brush. You could just kind of brighten a few of those if you want. Just adds to the cloud, really. Just a little here and there. You don't have to go crazy with this. Don't go over the top. I find a lot of the time, even for me, when I'm doing this, I tend to go over the top very fast and I kind of do too much. So I try to step back a little bit and not just overdo it. You know, put a little bit on first, then take a look and see if you want more. I find that's the easiest way to do it for me. I'm going to leave it at that. That is my sky, I would say, finished. You could maybe add, I'm looking at the photograph, you see, and I'm thinking there seems to be a bit more pink in the photograph, so I might just add a hint more magenta into that mix and just add a little touch of magenta here and there. It's a pinkish kind of a grey, just to maybe warm the clouds ever so slightly. Just soften them back in then. I think that's a nice complementary colour, a little bit of magenta. Okay, the next thing I want to do is this hill at the background here, this hilly kind of grassy verge coming down. Then I'm going to come down around the front and finish all of this. So in part two, all we have is a little house. So we can take our time with the house in part two and show you lots of little details and stuff like that. Okay, I think that's the best way forward. So let's mix up a nice green for this kind of grassy area up here. I'm going to just dampen my brush and I'm going to take a mix of black and cadmium yellow. That's a lovely green. Now most people assume it's blue and yellow make green. You can't make blue and yellow as a green, but it's a very cold green. A little bit of black makes a lovely, lovely green with the yellow. It really does. So I have a lovely green here. It's a nice rich dark green. Let's take a look. Okay, that's fine. And I'm just going to kind of dab along the top of that. Make it very random. Come down the side. And the problem with this now, which is very sort of translucent. Now, if your green is very translucent, what I mean by that is it's very sort of see-through. You can see the canvas behind it. You could add a touch of Naples yellow. That will thicken it up. Okay, and then you just go back in and add more of the colour you need to make it that lovely green. And that thickens up the paint. Now it's covering much better, you see. Now I think I'll try a little touch of extra blue in this first, just to make it a kind of a bluey green first, and then we can add warmth and we can add darks and highlights into this afterwards. So let's just fill this area in with this lovely colour, lovely rich green. Okay, that's That's okay. I'm happy enough with that. Then, now that looks kind of, I know that looks very dark. You see the shine on the canvas because my window is behind me. The sunlight is coming through the windows and it's kind of reflecting on the wet paint, so it's a little tricky for you to see. I'm just going to clean my brush very quickly and go right into cadmium yellow. And I'm then going to just start dabbing some cadmium yellow here and there, up at the top. And you can start dabbing it down as well. It's simply just to add some highlights into that grassy area up there. You could also take a touch of burnt sienna with cadmium yellow. That gives you a lovely warm colour as well. So just kind of putting different shades and colours through this. And then we come down into a sort of a dark colour. Let's take some black with some burnt umber and a touch of phthalo blue. And let's just pop a dark colour, a bit more burnt umber perhaps. Let's just pop a nice dark colour down at the base. And that just kind of sits it all down, doesn't it? It sits down nicely on the ground. And simply soften that up. Now, we could take some burnt umber with burnt sienna. And let's pretend there's kind of logs and tree trunks and all that kind of thing sticking out. Bits of timber. Just to see how that contrast now going up, it just adds a bit of depth to it, doesn't it? Then maybe go into some black on its own and just kind of scrape in a little black. It's just to suggest that there's a few bits and pieces here and there. You see what I mean? It just gives you the impression of detail without painting actual detail. The next thing I'm going to do is take a small pointy brush, a nice clean brush. I'm going to go into some Naples yellow, I think, and some burnt sienna. And I'm going to just put a suggestion of, you see, could be little tree trunks and all that kind of thing, bits of wood just laying around the place here and there. It's only a suggestion, that's all. But I won't go over the top, if you know what I mean. I'll just put a little suggestion of some bits and pieces going on. So just, again, the impression of little details. That's all you want to do. That's all I want to do. Little impressions of small, small details here and there. Could put another one up there perhaps, and you know, little dabs with the brush here and there, just to suggest that there's something there. Then I'll take a little bit of black and add a little bit of black in here and there as well. So the darks against the lights then will just help each other. And it's just, again, suggesting. All a suggestion. And lastly, at the top, I'm going to take a fan brush and a dry fan brush, just go right into some cadmium yellow there, pick a little bit of everything up and just suggest some grasses right up at the top. And just feather them down then, you see, just kind of allow them to disappear down. And even one or two down at the base as well. That just gives a nice little effect, doesn't it? So now already you can see we have an area here which looks like there's a lot going on. Looks like a lot of detail, doesn't it? But it's not really, it's just a few dabs with a brush here and there, isn't it? Let's just do the same over here with less work. This is off in the distance over here, so we're not going to see much over on this side. You could suggest perhaps, I don't know, a couple of bits of trees off in the distance or something like that. You know, one or two small little bits and pieces. Very gently dab the edge of your brush and pick up a bit of sienna. Dab a little bit of that in there. Pick up some Naples yellow. Dab a little bit of that. Maybe there's a field or something over there. You know what I mean? It could be anything. And we'll just take a touch of black. Sit that down. And already we have a lovely little field over there in the distance, don't we? Isn't that lovely? I'm moving on now to this lovely brown colour we have down here. Lovely sandy colour. And I'm just going to dampen my brush. I think I'll dampen this with some linseed oil, my friends. It's just, again, to help the paint move a little bit easier on the canvas. I think you'll agree it does kind of help. If you haven't tried this before, please do try it, because you will notice such a difference when you're working a lot of paint into a big area. It just really helps the paint flow around so easily. It's just a fantastic way of getting something done without struggling, if you know what I mean. Let's take burnt umber, burnt sienna, and some Naples yellow. I'm going to start with that colour. Let's take a look at this. Okay, let's just pop that in here first. And we'll just come around the house. We could probably even just fill the entire area with this colour, and then this will be a nice base. So we can work some different colours into this then, can't we? Now, it may be a little bit strong, so what we could do is take some Naples yellow and a touch of magenta. If you're painting a sandy colour, Naples yellow, magenta and a touch of burnt sienna is just a beautiful combination for a nice soft kind of a sandy colour. Now, isn't that paint just flying around on the canvas lovely over that oil because of the linseed oil? You see what I mean? It just flies around it lovely. And this will be just a base coat, really, just an undercoat, okay? That's all it is. A little touch of pink in there, I think, just makes all the difference. Once we have this done, then we can just start adding different colours, okay? So we have a base. That's our lovely base coat finished. Let's start adding some wonderful little colours into this. I'm going to start with a black and some magenta, and perhaps a hint of burnt sienna as well. That gives you a beautiful, soft, kind of a grey, browny grey, warm, pinky browny grey, okay? I'm going to just pop a little bit of that in here for a shadow first. Alright, just leave that disappear off. Okay, and we can come around, maybe around the front with that colour as well. And I'm simply just sort of dabbing the colour in here and there, and just kind of softening it in and swirling it around, just kind of making it sort of merge together ever so kind of slightly, okay? And I'm going to kind of put the suggestion of tracks, maybe at the front of the house. I'm going to put a suggestion of some tracks coming around like that, okay? Just a suggestion. I think that would make it nice as well. So it's just a very sandy area, and I'm just going to kind of soften this in here and there. Now, painting an area, kind of an area like this where it's just kind of earth, it can be tricky, because trying to make something look like earth is difficult, really. You know, there's so many different techniques for it, but I'm just going to try and keep this nice and loose. That's probably the best way of doing this. Just keep it nice and loose. I'm going to add a little bit of violet into this. I'm going to take some blue and some magenta, and I'm going to add a hint of a pinky purple into this, just around the shadowed areas as well. So in around the base of the house, for example, and up around this side as well. A kind of a mauve pink. It just gives a beautiful colour, especially in shadows and things like that. It gives so much to a painting. But I'm not using too much blue in this, because you will get muddy. If you end up putting a bluey purple into this brown, it's going to go a kind of a muddyish greeny colour. So plenty of magenta. And the whole point of this really is just to try and make it look very busy. all right? Just make it look very busy, like there's just a lot of stuff going. It's just a very messy floor, very messy ground area. Soften it in up there, up to your trees. Look, dab it along, kind of merging one down into the other ever so slightly. Already it's looking quite nice, isn't it? And then I'm going to try a fan brush. Let's try a fan brush for a change. Let's get some burnt umber and magenta. And a touch of Naples yellow perhaps. And we can use that fan brush as well to make it very sort of rough and messy looking. Just by dabbing. Dab, 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 dab. And that just, you see the way that just gives you almost an impression of lots of little pebbles and all that kind of thing. Which is a nice little touch. I'll go up here and I'll soften it back into the earth up here as well, back into that green area. Just going to kind of pull them down together. Maybe take a hint of black in there, go along our footpath. It's kind of, I'm just making the impression of a very old kind of a walkway perhaps, which is almost kind of disappearing into the earth as well. So perhaps the land was being built on or something like that, and the builders decided to move and leave it for some reason. Perhaps. It's just a very earthy area. So let's just create some texture. Let's just throw the fan brush around and create a little bit of texture here and there. Lots of movement in the ground. Lots of stuff going on. And you can't really pick out individual pebbles and all that kind of thing. So I'm making it very loose, you see. Sort of merging everything together to make it look very dirty and very rough. Now I'm going to go into some Naples yellow, touch of magenta, and I might go back here and add, like maybe there's a hint of sunlight over on this side. Maybe there's hints of sunlight popping through the sun and just, or popping through the clouds and just hitting the earth here and there. You can put a touch of yellow in there as well, look, a touch of cadmium yellow. It gives a nice effect, doesn't it? Hints of light on the ground. A little bit more of that, that's quite nice, isn't it? I like that. And I think maybe the last thing we need to do is, let me just get some more Naples yellow now, just for a moment, and just cut in front of that and in around the back. Soften it across. I think maybe the next step for this would be a couple of pebbles and stuff like that. Just maybe a few small stones, just to suggest a little bit of detail. Okay, just a tiny little bit of detail. Now we have lots of kind of light grey stones, so let's just take some blue and some white, and I'm going to just pop some blue and some white in here and there, and then we'll give these a little bit of highlight as well. And you could use a fan brush for this one as well, just to dab them on with your fan brush. That's completely acceptable as well. A little bit of blue, a little bit of white, just popping them in here and there. And it's mixing with the brown, you see, so it gives you these different colours, some nice contrasts. I'm just putting a suggestion of little mounds of pebbles here and there. Then, a little bit of dark to these, a little bit of shadow. They need a bit of shadow, don't they? I'll just take a little bit of burnt umber and black. And I'll just suggest again, little dark spots on some of these pebbles. Just go around very loosely and just add, you know, hints of darks here and there on some of these. Again, that just catches your eye, it draws your eye in slightly, doesn't it? And we can just get some burnt umber and suggest little bits and pieces with some burnt umber as well. just making it look busy. For me, I'd say 30 to 40% of any painting for me is based on making it look busy and fussy. That's what I would say. In my paintings, I try to make them just look busy, like there's a lot of stuff going on. And, you know, that can be a lot of your painting, especially when you're painting an impression of something like this. That can be a lot, just making it look like there's a lot of stuff going on. Now we could try that with the fan brush as well. Let's just get some nice dark colour with the fan brush. Some brown and some black. And look, you could just go along very gently, dabbing a little bit of dark in here and there. Maybe one or two tiny bits of grasses popping up. They might not even be grasses, they might be just like dark bits of earth, brown reeds, that kind of thing. But just making it look like there's a lot going on. Now already I think that looks quite nice. It seems to be it seems to be looking a little busy, doesn't it? And of course we can go back over a lot of this if we don't like it. You can of course go back over it. I might take some of that white, a hint of Naples yellow with my palette knife, and suggest some thicker rocks with that as well. Look, just dab it on and leave it. Just scrape it across your canvas. And you can see how that already suggests a very sort of a rocky area just over here, doesn't it? A couple of little dabs with your palette knife can make it look like there's so much going on in the painting. Another little bit over there. Little piles of stones perhaps, or something like that. You know, it could be anything. And do we need to keep going with this? I don't know. It's perfectly fine as it is, I think. You know, you don't have to keep at it and at it, because sometimes if you keep going with something like this, you can actually spoil it. You can actually make it worse. So that's another thing to be careful about. Not making it worse. Take a bit of Naples yellow perhaps, just pop a little Naples yellow in there, and a bit just along the path. Just to lighten the path just a touch. And I would say that's okay. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm pretty happy with this. And it's amazing, isn't it, really, how quickly a normal brush painting can turn into a knife painting. It can't it? You know, you can do so much with your palette knife and create so much texture. It's amazing. My friends, I'm going to call this part 1 finished, and I'll be back and we'll concentrate on the building. And that's going to be fun. The building is going to be a lot of fun. So, just go along and just, you know, add touches of colour. Let's call that done. So there. Let me just bring the camera right back now so you can see both me and the painting. And there we are. My friends, thank you so much for joining me. Part 1 is finished. I'll be right back with part 2. Don't go anywhere. I hope you've enjoyed it so far.